Good morning, it's Bill for Bill's on Broadway. Today's topic is wheel bearing. We had test drove this car and now it's on the lift and we're going to shake it down. The wheel bearing is definitely making noise. Plus it's also affecting the brake pedal, so it makes the brake pedal feel spongy. And I heard the noise in it and I come up here and we have this tremendous amount of play in it. That is definitely a bad wheel bearing. So as you know, we talked about the wheel bearing. I got the rotors off, and we took the calipers off, and I also noticed the brake pads are getting thin. It's not due yet. This is the caliper here. We took that off, and now I'm down to the wheel bearing. Turned out to be this wheel bearing is inside of this hub. So with that being said, we have to take this spindle off, and then we're going to go over on the press and we're going to press this wheel bearing on and get the new one in and change this stuff over. But I got to remove the axle shaft, disconnect it from the lower A-arm and disconnect it from the upper A-arm. And then we'll move forward from that. So you notice there's a nut on here. I noticed some new grease in there. It looks like somebody's been in there before. This is a tool that we use to take the tie rod end loose. A lot of times when I work on them, a little bit of tapping with the hammer will make them come off. But if they're super tight, I get the tool out that way. I don't bend or damage any of the components on the steering. This is the tie rod end remover. Now I have the hub and the wheel bearings inside this hub. This is what we're going to change, get this bearing out of this device. Normally these would come off easy. Somebody's been in it. Usually you crack it loose and it just spins out. But that's not the case with this one. This is the dead blow hammer. It's got lead bead built in it. So when I hit, it don't bounce. So when you're slamming it, it gives you 3 times the power of the hammer. So that's why regular lead brass hammer versus this, that ain't moving it, this is. It's just that freaking tight. I just never had one that tight though.
2 hours later.
All right, we spent several hours getting this race out of this hub. Yeah, it's beat up a little bit, but previously somebody put this on and they put it on wrong. And but I managed to get the job done. I have the new bearing in there, and all cleaned up in grease. This is what the bad bearing looks like. You can see on the chrome, all the pitted and rust. This makes all the grinding noise. Apparently water got in there somehow and rusted it out. I don't know if this car was maybe in a flood zone and it sat in water for a while and it got to this bearing. And you can see all the rust in here. But this is where we are. We got this job done. I got the new product going, and we're ready to put it back on the spindle. We have a torque wrench here, and I believe this torque is 198 foot-pounds. This thing makes a beep or a vibrate and lets me know that I've reached the torque that I needed. Now if you come on over here, there's a little groove in here. I got to bend this thing into that groove, and that keeps this thing from backing off. And a lot of people, when they try to do this at home, they seem to miss that, and then this nut will back off and the wheel goes taking off while they're down the road. So we always want to knock that in the groove so this nut doesn't back off. I like to give it a spin. Everything feels good, and it's nice and smooth. I did put the spindle back on the lower ball joints and upper ball joint. Now we're ready to put the brakes back on this, and she'll be ready to go down the road. By the way, I sandblast the rotor and the surface on both sides so we don't have any high and low spots. And when the rotor's put on and you hit the brakes, you're not going to feel that pulsating. This is eliminated. Installing it wrong. What I did is I got any grease on this, I sprayed it with brake clean and get the grease off of it so it doesn't contaminate the pad. This is something I do in my shop. This is the spindle that holds the brake pads. As you can see, we clean these tips up, we sandblast them down, put a little bit of lube on it. We make sure the slide pins that hold the calipers are free. We want them to float, and we lube these up too as well. What I did, I got the caliper all back in. We used the old pads in the old rotor, but I want to do this. And the caliper slides back and forth. That tells me nothing is frozen and the brakes are going to be good. I don't have to go down the road and have the wheel jerk one direction or the other because I've made something stuck on it. But always make sure this guy moves in and out. That is it with the job, and now you have just saw how we did a wheel bearing job. Thank you for choosing Built on Broadway, where we know your car.